How's it going, everybody? This is Mark from Like Minded Lunatics, and I am here with Richard Hall. Ricky, you want to introduce yourself to the folks?
Hey, Richard Hall, but all my buddies call me Ricky. I'm a sometimes musician, full-time nerd.
And Ricky has collaborated with me and Todd on a number of projects. And Ricky's been working on a project with me and Todd for a while, and it's kind of slowed down. And so we threw together something that I had in the back pocket for quite a while. So at the beginning of 2020, I did a performance at one of Todd Wright's shows that he's a co-producer and co-creator of in San Antonio called Stories Run Amok. And I performed this short story I'd written called Bobby's Last Beer. And the performance didn't go great. Todd said it did. It didn't feel great to me. And I felt like I had screwed this story up when I performed it. And so I sent it to Ricky, and Ricky was like, we could totally do something with this. And so he did. And it is like it's like an audio book. Ricky, you want to talk about maybe just a second what you thought when you got the story?
I thought it was real fun. It had some good tongue-in-cheek moments. It had some kind of nutty, crazy moments, and both of those just kind of really fit into my style. And I'm always doing such serious music all the time, so I need kind of these types of breaks, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And just so folks know, you are a professor of music at Texas State University, right? So a lot of your stuff is academic work. So I would imagine that this
it's like serious experimental music, and I do a new music ensemble, and we do music by the New York School, and structured improvisations, using the spectral style and minimalism and all that kind of stuff, which is fine.
Right.
But I tell a lot of people it's kind of like, that's me eating sushi and stuff, but I need a good greasy cheeseburger every once in a while, and this is a good cheeseburger.
So Like Minded Lunatic stuff is your cheeseburger.
That's right, man. That's
Perfect.
right.
That's great. And I know when I sent this to you, so just so folks know, we'll keep this intro short. I don't want to spoil anything because there's a huge turn in this story, and I don't want to reveal any of that stuff. But when I sent this one to you, I said, Bobby, the titular character, is listening to Black Sabbath in his truck. And that's the only cue that I gave you. What did you do? How did you come up with the rest of the music? Because, man, it is awesome.
You told me that, and I know I played in garage bands in high school. I knew Sabbath pretty well. So I listened to which one was it? Sleep?
Behind the Wall of Sleep.
Behind the Wall of Sleep, that's it. So I listened to it a couple times, and then I went on a bike ride. I usually try to ride and stay fit and just listen to Sabbath the whole time, like some of the old stuff.
Yeah.
And then came back and just kind of fiddled with my guitars. And in an hour, I had this kind of Black Sabbath-like tune. And I sent it to you. I was like, hey, man, I'm thinking of this. And you're like, yeah, let's go for it. And then everything just kind of sprung from that. That was a lot of fun. It
is so rad. Okay, so I don't want to blow anything else. I just want to set that up. That this was a story that I originally performed live, wasn't happy with it, asked Ricky to help redeem this story, and I think, man, we have more than redeemed it. It's fun. It's only about 9 minutes long, and we'll come back with an outro where we can talk about some of the specifics without spoiling the story. So without further ado, please enjoy Bobby's Last Beer. Bobby's Last Beer. Bobby watched the bug gut smash against his windshield one after the other, and each they made as they exploded on the windshield was more satisfying than the last. He liked the way they sounded simultaneously liquidy and crunchy. It reminded him of his mawmaw trying to eat cereal, and Bobby would wait until the bug guts damn near covered the entire windshield before he'd turn on the wipers to create a kaleidoscope of otherworldly colors. He giggled as the wipers made a bigger and bigger mess. Bobby thought there was nothing quite like riding around at night on gravel roads and drinking beer after a long day at work. Bobby noticed the beer between his legs felt a little light, so he emptied the last sip, thrust his left hand out of the window and over the top of the cab of his pickup and let that empty can fly. He watched in the rearview mirror as it smashed into the tailgate and rattled around in the bed of the pickup with all the other empties. Bobby decided to reach down in the passenger side floorboard into his lunch cooler to get himself another cold beer. But it was so damn dark he couldn't really see around the inside of the pickup truck. He made a mental note to grab some light bulbs for at least the instrument panel next time he was at AutoZone. And while still holding onto the steering wheel with his left hand, Bobby stretched down and practically had to lie down in that old bench seat to reach the passenger side floorboard. As his old truck bounced around on the gravel road, the ass end of it skipping over the washboard of potholes, Bobby made a mental note to get the shocks looked at too. His fingers fumbled blindly in the floorboard. Work boots? Nope. Gloves? CD cases. Move. Empty cans. Getting warmer. Cooler. Open and ice. And one cold beer left. And just as Bobby started to sit back up and recommence to drinking and driving, the steering wheel spun out of the grip of his left hand, he dropped that beer out of his right hand, and he felt his truck lift up and off the ground, and suddenly, everything became all light and floaty. And then crashing chaos. The tumbling truck whirled Bobby around in the cab like a leaf in a tornado, and Bobby was knocked unconscious for the first time that night. Beer sprayed all over his limp, unconscious body as the truck tumbled under the pale, aqueous light of a gibbous moon. And then stillness. The dripping sounds of leaking fluid, the squeaking of a still-moving wheel. When Bobby finally came to, he realized right quick that the truck was upside down because when he looked up, he saw the accelerator pedal. He felt sweaty, but he worried that the stickiness he was wiping off his forehead was something other than sweat and grime. He hoped it was oil. He knew it probably wasn't. And it took Bobby a good while to squirm and writhe his way out of the wrecked pickup truck. It had landed after several spins and flips, just off the gravel road and in a big muddy ditch. Bobby plopped down in the brown rancid water on his butt with a splash and stared at the mangled mess of his truck. He'd heard people say that drunks usually walk away from violent car crashes without a scratch on them. So he said a little prayer of thanks to Jesus for letting him be so drunk when he'd crashed. He felt sure it was his drunkenness that had saved him. It was then that Bobby noticed how bad his head was hurting. It was throbbing and spiking with pain so damn bad he could practically feel his temples move. So Bobby laid back in the muddy water. The fetid brackishness covered his ears and almost went up over his eyes. But his nose and mouth was above the surface, so he figured it was all right to take a little nap, just until his damn head stopped hurting. Bobby was ripped from behind the wall of sleep and awoken by the pain of the brightest light he had ever known. It was so blindingly bright, he found he couldn't even close his eyes to avoid looking at it. He opened his mouth to scream, but he discovered he was unable to make any noise at all. Then Bobby felt a pressure on his chest that was both pushing and pulling him, and he clawed at the gravel at the bottom of the muddy ditch in a futile attempt to steady himself, and his fingernails began to crack, splinter, and then raggedly break over the rocks. Eventually, the light stopped alternating between pushing and pulling and started focusing on pulling and tugging him. The mud around Bobby's body made a sucking and popping sound as the light pulled him up and out of the muck, and right before Bobby floated beyond the tops of the ancient trees that embowered the twisted wreckage of his truck, consciousness slipped away from Bobby for the second time that night. Bobby regained consciousness before he regained his sight. He could tell he was lying horizontally, but he couldn't feel a bed beneath him, and the chilly air had raised goose pimples all over his flesh, and he realized all his clothes were gone. He tried to bolt upwards, to run, to jump, to move, but despite his muscles contracting, his arms and legs refused to move. On the outside, his body remained as still as a statue. But on the inside, in his mind, Bobby was thrashing and screaming.
Finally, Bobby's eyes opened, and he wished they hadn't. He tried to close them immediately, but now they were held open by the same force that had held them shut a moment before. Bobby found himself lying on what he assumed was a table in the middle of a stark white room. And Bobby wasn't even sure he was in a room because he couldn't see walls or a ceiling or any solid shapes at all, just whiteness everywhere. He couldn't move his head, but Bobby moved his eyes and looked to the right as hard as he could. In his peripheral vision, just before the blackness that occurs at the corner of the eye, Bobby could see he was only one person in a field of other people. And these people, who were all naked, were simply floating several feet above the whiteness, presumably just as Bobby was. And there were hundreds of them, as far as his strained eyesight could see. At this moment, Bobby truly knew terror. Then Bobby heard an excruciatingly loud humming noise. It resonated through his entire head. His jaw clamped together so hard he felt his back teeth crack, and it felt like the hum was trying to shake his skull into dust. And then, suddenly and without warning, the terror began to slide and melt away, and his inner self became as calm and subdued as his limbs were motionless. He still felt the humming presence inside his head, but he didn't care as much. It was gentler than before, soothing even, and Bobby felt the humming presence scanning his thoughts and memories like a child, playfully fanning the pages of a flipbook. Or maybe playing with his memories, like oscillating windshield wipers batting insect viscera to and fro, and his mind filled with unnamable, otherworldly colors, and the black sea of infinity unfolded itself before him. Bobby felt himself sink into the luminous amorphousness, and he felt the chilly touch of squamous appendages exploring and caressing his naked flesh, then probing and creeping alongside his body, and finally boring into his eyes and mouth. As the last bit of Bobby's essence was consumed, he suddenly wished he'd been able to have that one last beer. He started to say another little prayer to Jesus, but before he could, Bobby's consciousness was lost for the third and final time that night.
All right, folks, welcome back. Hopefully you liked that. That got real weird real quick. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. That music, though, Ricky, at the end, when the voice starts booming, when Bobby is being consumed, that was intense. Can you talk a little bit about some of those sound effects, some of the synthesizer, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, don't sell yourself too short, because this was a collaboration, and I mean, I did the music and sound stuff, but you had the story, and we shared a lot of ideas, and, I originally recorded it, and I didn't put those effects in there, and then you'd said, hey, what if you were to put, you're always saying, like Evil Dead, which is fine, because I love the movie as well. So, yeah, I put a lot of, like, reverb and delay. There's also something called granular synthesis.
Okay.
Which like kind of gives it the low meaty, and it's complicated. It breaks sounds into grains and all that, but it gives it that low meaty resonance. But then I kind of did a 50-50 of your voice and that voice.
Oh, wow.
On there. And you have to watch out, because if the effects get too crazy, you can't hear what's being said. And, the text is important. So I kind of brought that in.
Gotcha.
It's very easy. And hey, real quick, I want you to tell me, because I don't know this, where did this story come from? Like, what's the inspiration, or how did this start?
You're going to laugh. This beginning of this story is the setup to a 5,000 word joke. So the beginning of this story, which is what everyone just heard, is about a redneck who gets abducted. And it seems like everything is very Lovecraftian. And so at the end of this story, where you ended it, it picks back up, and I adopted kind of a Asimov tone as opposed to Lovecraft. And we pick up in the middle of a spaceship 2,000 years into the future with a group of supposedly Earth people who have since evolved, trying to figure out why our Earth died. And so they're abducting people to see what happened. And they go through this whole academic meeting about it. And why did they ignore all the environmental signs? Why did they ignore X, Y, and Z? Why? And at the very end of it, the chief asks, did they have a name for themselves? Yes, they were called Americans. And that's the end of the line.
Nice.
And so Bobby was like the prototypical American, and he was the punchline to the entire thing. And that never worked. It was way too long. It was way too long for that joke, but that's where the story came from.
That's great. That's great.
And so when Todd asked me to appear in his show, he's like, you got anything you want to read? Because they were putting the show together. I was like, I got this thing, but the first part's the only part that's worth a crap.
That's great. You know, at the end, I couldn't really tell, once I really got into it, I couldn't tell if maybe he was abducted and on a spaceship or if he was in a Lovecraftian dimension or some, you know, another planet or another world.
So the Lovecraftian stuff that came around when I was editing it for Run Amok. That wasn't in the original draft. It was pretty obvious that it was kind of a oh God, what's the name of that? In the 90s, Ricky, there was a book by like a Whitney Strieber or something. It was about UFO abductions or something. It was like that. It was basically him just getting abducted. And I added all the Lovecraft stuff because I thought, you know what, that part doesn't play anyway, so let's just make it cosmic horror.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love that kind of stuff.
So hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Ricky, you're working on When Clarissa Tried to Steal the Amulet right now, which is a story that you, me, and Todd performed several years ago here in Austin.
A prequel to all the Wade.
Yeah.
When Wade. And that's really close. Really close.
And the tone to me of that one, if folks like this one, I feel like they would really enjoy that one too. Because it gets weird. It gets horror very, very quickly. So maybe a sneak peek for you guys out there. Ricky, I want to thank you for helping me with this one, man. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be a part of it. I love it.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you like the videos, and please leave us comments and share us on social media. We need your help to build and expand the channel. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you soon.